Welcome, everyone. Yeah, nice to be here. Nice to see you all. This is the What's the Best Luxury Album panel discussion. So I'm just going to introduce the panelists who will be presenting their cases today. We have Alan Parrish. He's a prolific blogger based in Detroit, Michigan, whose album and concert reviews and other musical takes can be found at Turn the Radio Off. He'll be representing Amazing and Thank You. John Coates is Assistant Professor of Theology at Ambrose University in Calgary, Alberta, and he's the author of A Shared Mercy, Karl Barth on Forgiveness in the Church. He'll be advocating for the latest and the greatest. Misha Willett is a poet and Assistant Professor of English and Writing at Seattle Pacific University. He's written 2 books of poems, Phases and the Beta Elegy, and also has written for outlets including Comment and Christ in Pop Culture. He'll be representing Luxury's self-titled album. And Joel Hang-Hartsey is a lecturer in the Department of Education at Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, BC, my undergrad alma mater. And he's also a second language writing specialist. He's written frequently on music, especially most notably in his book, Sex, Love, and Rock and Roll, as well as in the likes of Christianity Today and Image. He'll be championing health and sport. And lastly, Michael Farmer, who served as an assistant professor of English and perhaps is best known for being one of the co-hosts of the Christian Humanist podcast. His writings have appeared in Front Porch Republic, America, and Touchstone, and he's the author of Imagination and Idealism in John Updike's fiction, and he'll be advocating for trophies. So whoever would like to begin, please take us off.
Let's go in chronological order.
That would make sense.
All right, that's me. So since I'm the only non-professor on the panel, I'm going to keep it shallow, and I'm going to focus on the rock. Anyway, I'm going to start with the argument that all music from the year 1995 is the best. So I mean, that's just number one. So Amazing and Thank You was released in 1995. So that's it. I'm done. So I know. No, I would say my central, stance on Amazing and Thank You being the best luxury album is that it most accurately represents the luxury live show. So my luxury fandom is set in the fact that luxury has put on the best live rock concert I've ever been to. And I've been to hundreds, if not thousands of shows in multiple continents, states, et cetera, et cetera. So I was, thankfully, I lived in the South, Georgia, Tennessee, and Alabama. So I was near Luxury, and I was able to see them a lot. Probably saw them about 15 times between the years of 1995 and 2001. And they're mind-blowing, So I know the timing of this panel is around the release of the documentary, and hopefully you've all seen it. But if we're recording this and if we use this, hopefully this can be promoting the documentary as well. But one of the first quotes in the doc, if not the first one, is Dave Vanderpool of Bulletproof saying, "That's the best live show I've ever seen." And it was, and when I saw Luxury, I mean, I was a teenager who was going to 3 or 4 shows a month. So it's not like I didn't see music that much. I saw a lot, and they were different and they were incredible, So once again, the documentary, the first few minutes, you've got the montage of all the live footage set to Pink Revenge from Amazing and Thank You. And that's what I think of when I think of Luxury. If I had to simplify everything in my head, that's what I think of is that beautiful chaos on the stage. Yeah, no, I mean, I think the other thing that is to touch on the documentary is that, I'm an introvert and I like going to shows and I like kind of lurking in the back. I'm very tall, which you can't tell, but I'm 6'4", so I can see over people, so I can kind of stand wherever I want. And I like kind of hiding out, and just watching shows. But you can't do that at Luxury concerts, because Lee would eventually make eye contact with you, no matter where you were in the crowd, and somebody said in the documentary, "Is he singing to me?" And so that was awkward, but it was cool at the time. The other thing that is so appealing and once again consistent with the live show is the dynamic range.
Call of Duty.
Whoa. Somebody else is very excited about Amazing and Thank You.
Do you
want? Anyway, yes, from the loud to the quiet, the album has it all, as far as that goes. And I mean, I absolutely loved it. And at the time, it was very different than other things I was listening to. Another guy in the documentary that was interviewed quite a bit, who I highly respect, Andy Prickett of the Prayer Chain and Kush. He said, one of the things he said, it was hysterical, is that going on after them was disheartening. You didn't want to follow Luxury because they were so good. And Andy went on to say, they're a great live band. They kill everybody, and he was referring to the Amazing and Thank You era, those songs that he was seeing performed live. And then also in the documentary, as they're talking about going in to record in the studio, Andy makes a comment to Steve Hindalong, don't tune their guitars for them. So that's one of the things I love about Amazing and Thank You, is that it's rough around the edges. The other Luxury albums are very polished, more polished, which I mean, I also appreciate and love. But yeah, it sounds like Luxury does. The shows I went to when I listened to Amazing and Thank You, that I feel like I'm at the show, when I'm listening to the album. I will make a few lyrical comments. So I was 18 when I first heard the album, didn't get any of it, didn't understand any of it. I was a pretty sheltered kid. Even when Lee was talking about sex, I didn't know he was talking about sex probably most of the time. I didn't realize that until a whole lot later. I would say the song I related to most lyrically was I Know What You Think About Me. But I was never actually that angry at someone. I just kind of wanted to be that angry at somebody, and it sounded kind of, I don't know. But otherwise, I always loved the song Solid Gold. I mean, I guess that was pretty clearly a love song to me. And that was always my favorite. And I'll end with, if you have not already, I would recommend you read my review of the album Amazing and Thank You that I wrote for a Medium group that a few of us were part of a few years ago. But the first time I saw Luxury, they actually only played Solid Gold. That was the only song they played. So to understand that context, you'll have to read my review, and I'm going to put a link in the comments after I'm finished. But that's what I've got. Amazing and Thank You is the best Luxury album because it's what Luxury sounded like in concert.
All right, that's awesome. I think I'm probably next. So the latest and the greatest came second in order of Luxury albums, and I'm not all that good at being coherent without reading prepared remarks. So I wrote a review of sorts that I'm just going to sort of riff off of here. I guess my argument is similar to Alan's in that it has to do with context. Although in this case, I'm not going to say it's so much about capturing their live presence, but more so like capturing the voice or the heart of like a generation. Whether people have heard it or not, it sort of speaks to and for a generation. So when I picked up this album in 1997, I think I was just passing 20 years old. I was full of the angst and the worry, which so frustrated my generation, Gen X. And I can remember sitting in my dank basement bedroom with false wood paneling, holding on to this CD that I'd found in the Christian bookstore that no one I knew would listen to, and was alone and troubled and wishing I could just find myself. And I put on the latest and the greatest, and it was the first and maybe the only time I ever felt like an album listened to me. And that's like how I feel when I listen to it even again. It just takes me right back, but also it sort of holds up because it still remains sort of true. And so there's something about the energy of the drums and the soaring guitars, which feel almost like grunge and pop or punk. It has that energy, but then it's the clear, like pensive vocals that allow you to feel upset and hopeful at once, which was really, really important to me at that age and actually continues to be. So I just sort of want to remark on the songs one by one as quickly as I can and just talk about how they capture this for me. So the first song, the title track, starts off with this brooding sort of drumscape, and then it sort of gets bombastic, and then there's lyrics about a revolution, and then pretty quickly you realize they're being satirical and singing about how great they are. or at least that's how it comes across to me. And then there's these great instrumental breaks in the second and third minutes of the song. And then he says, you know, life is more than being sexy. And if you learn that, well, you learn that from me. And there's something about how it's like, it's stoking this desire for revolution, but also exposing the arrogance of it and like channeling you into something more patient and mundane. I just, in reflection, I can see that it sort of did that. Although, like Alan said, I don't know if I caught all this at the time, at least that in a way I could articulate. And then the second song, From the Lion Within, is very satirical as well. I mean, I didn't believe for a second that they were preaching the wonders of luxury. It was, and even if they were pointing at themselves, it was ironic. So they were ahead of their times in terms of the level of irony there. And it's just a similar themes, sort of bracing energy, just like track one. It's a great song. Incidentally, there's a guitar riff at the 3-minute mark of song 2, which sounds like it's like U2 ripped it off for their Batman soundtrack song. And I always thought U2 ripped it off, but it turns out U2's came first, so I don't know who would win the court case if there had to be one. But Luxuries is a better song. So then the third track, fourth track, fifth track, I think are just masterpieces. So there's Not So Grand, where it sort of stays with a plodding guitar riff with melody over top, and talks about the first lines, am I a lover of being a failure or just a failure at being a lover? And then, no, I have never changed the world, though I've been told 1,000 times I should want to, but no one has asked me to. I mean, if there's better Gen X poetry, I've never heard it. It is so perfect. And then the song doesn't even leave it there. It asks, am I too much like Voltaire's Candide? Which I didn't know at the time, but is like a reference to a satirical 18th century novel where Candide is taught by his age to respond to every tragedy with like optimism, saying this is the best of all possible worlds. Yeah, there's in the chat. But by the end, he comes to this more quotidian conclusion, like we just need to cultivate our gardens, which is so fantastic. So like, if the album by song 4 like feels like wisdom literature from the Hebrew Bible, if you'll excuse me for some theology, and then in song 4 you get like prophecy because it's like scathing lyrics about consumerist sort of self-actualization. Love yourself and go for the gusto. America raised me, don't you know? Future looks bright ahead, but I wonder, will everyone be dead? It's just so fantastic. And then the line that stuck in my head, I still just find myself singing out of nowhere, is, if this is the modern world, why do I feel so very out of place? So again, just like, wow, can you do any better than that? And still be hopeful in some weird way. That's the thing, right? Scathing, but hopeful. And then, so, you know, to hurry it up a bit, the glory is incredible. These pearls of mine, unknown to all the swine, these pearls of mine, I can see the greed on everyone's mind, and so I'll wait and hesitate, carry on a little more just to be wise. It seems to be saying, like, what we all felt at the time, I think, is that the boomer generation was just, we're going to be in their shadow forever, and as soon as we stuck our heads out, we get exploited. And so the song is just like, basically, don't give your pearls to swine, but don't kid yourselves, because clutching after your pearls is a fool's errand as well. So just be wise. It's just like preaching to the soul, right? Red Mascara is fantastic. I find it a little problematic to go back to it and see it's sort of projecting the foolishness of lustful youth onto the pretty girl with the dark red lipstick, but it's fair enough. You know, it's saying to hold out for more than the shallow I love yous in verse 3. And the thing is to remember, like the documentary gets this really well, is the backdrop for this album is this prudish Christian music scene, where to even sing about the sort of electric current of like sexual desire felt like a celebration and not a no-no to me at the time. King Me is probably my favorite song. Isn't life meant to be lived, and isn't life meant to never grow old? It's just like giving you that ounce of courage to like just go and live and love. And then Hell or High Water is kind of builds on that and talks about the promise of like companionship and friendship. And even before I'd read about the socially constructed nature of identity, it teaches me, you know, please don't betray me and let me forget who I am. It's this awesome, like, teachable moment. And then the last two songs are just epic. I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings is, it laments like helplessness, loss, passage of time, and then there's this just climactic burst of energy about this caged bird song, this like defiant holding on to life no matter what. And I didn't realize this at the time either, but it's an ode to like the determined witness of the African American community. The title, of course, is from Maya Angelou and poet Lawrence Dunbar, novel and poetry. And then the Pearls is like almost, it's got this slow strumming and this plinking like high piano. It's like the denouement to I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. And it talks about death and the fountain of immortality. And it doesn't feel at all like escapism. It just feels like almost like you're the caged bird in this life, just hoping that the things of this life will get to carry on and have value. And I don't know that I could have articulated at the time, but that all spoke to me then in a way it still speaks to me now. And so for all those reasons, I just think it like hears and eloquently states like a generation's sort of best hopes and angers without collapsing into sort of despair or like happy clappy optimism. And for that reason, I think it is unironically, while not the latest, the greatest luxury album. And maybe one of the best, rock albums of our time. I'll go that far.
Well done. Man, you're convincing me. I'm gonna change my vote. Never mind, I'm with it. Thank you. Thanks for organizing this, Joel. Just for the people that are just joining us, you should get Joel's book, Sex, Love, and Rock and Roll, which is my favorite music criticism. I just love this. I just love this thing. And it's so nice to meet some of you that I've known only in online spaces for a long time. So it's nice just to sit and talk music for a little while with people that care about the same things. It's a great joy. And the band members that are listening, thank you for giving us an occasion to gather in this way. I'm gonna claim that self-titled record is the best, not necessarily my favorite, but the best luxury record. And I also want to say that this is that's a hard call for me to make. I feel like under certain pressures I could have repped any one of these actually and made, I don't know if the case will be coherent, but I've said some things because there's not a clear standout for me, and that's a good thing, I think. But that means I'm making kind of appeal to value, right? Like there's a real thing here. Like I don't know if the standard is anything like objective, but there's a standard that I want to sort of hold this up to that I hope will come across. But first, I got to use a term that a lot of you guys are going to have problems with, I think. So a little while ago on Twitter, someone asked what the greatest CCM song of all time was. And some of you guys were on that thread and heard about it. Now, people in this room obviously know that CCM used to be used in a different way, I think, than people use it now. That it referred to a very specific kind of sound, right? This adult contemporary market, largely based in and around Tennessee, and people who listen to music like we did would never have used that term to describe Starflyer 59 or Poor Old Lou or any of these other bands that we would love. They were just not that. And I don't think we were being weird about that. It wasn't. It's a different kind of music. But now 20-something years have passed since a lot of this stuff happened. And I think it's all narrowing to be like music made by or for Christians in a contemporary milieu all counts as a kind of CCM. The discussion on Twitter went a predictable way, and I think people landed on Secret Ambition or Lead Me On as probably the greatest. And maybe that's right. But my vote was Euphrates with Golden Hands from Self-Titled. The first thing that came to mind, which was weird because I love all that music still. I'm not embarrassed about it. Lead Me On is a fantastic song. It's hard to beat this song. But I still love those. I love all those records. I'm super into Stephen Curtis Chapman and Michael Smith as well as all that much harder stuff. So that's not like an embarrassing part of youth I've left behind. I still like that stuff. But as soon as someone asked the question, Oscar Wilde said, how do I know what I think until I've seen what I've said? As soon as someone asked, what's the greatest song? I thought, oh, Euphrates with Golden Hands. It's the best song made by or for Christians ever. So, and part of it is because of some things that you others have mentioned already, but this punk sense of indicting the generation, while also turning on like sort of the Christian mark at the same time. Luxury was good at turning on people. They managed to make enemies of a certain number of groups. But that's what punk rockers do, right? There's a sort of in-your-face quality to it. But especially this, part of it is the lyrics for me. I'm a poet. The lyrics matter as much or more than the music in most cases. And little turns of phrase like name and claim your way out of obscurity. They have that line. And that line is doing so much work, it seems to me. And I'm just impressed over and over again. This name it and claim it is a sort of reference to this prosperity gospel, televangelist, subculture of evangelicalism, right? The idea that you can just, that Mercedes is mine in Jesus' name, you know? People say that sort of thing and believe it. There are people around the world that think that's something. And just by saying that, they're taking the piss out of it a little bit, yeah? But also, it's not naming and claiming a Mercedes, it's out of obscurity. And I just thought, man, that's the real American wish. Like, if you gave us a genie, so many people I know just want to be more famous. Like, they wouldn't pick a Mercedes, but I'd give 10,000 followers, that'll do, you know? And all this is before Instagram came out. Twitter didn't exist when they said this. Do you know what I mean? We think of this as a contemporary problems, but the idea of languishing away in obscurity seems a kind of cancer, and they've got their finger right on the button of it. And then it has this big turn, oh God, turn your face and they'll serve no more, Euphrates with golden hands. And even that term, like, it requires, you have to know some things about Egyptian deities and Orthodox theology of idolatry. Like, all that stuff's got to be in place, you know, to establish the kind of audience for a song like this. And then when it makes a big turn like that, and you know the psalmist is being referenced, that's all it would take is a little bit more from the God of the Bible, and all this would just wash away. And I'm overpowered every time. It seems like it gets the market right, it gets the history right, it gets the theology right, and it gets the music right, all in one package. As well as being, as always, a great deal of fun, the songs that they have. I'm going to talk about 3 songs. I'll try to talk about only 3 songs, although Noda could have picked any 3 songs off the record, and I think they all work. It's just that kind of thing. We all know that Luxury is a performative kind of band, performing notions of gender and kinds of anger and self-righteousness and rock stardom. All there's a layer of satire underneath or over the top of and in between everything they do. And so it's a little hard to get your feet under you sometimes, especially on those first 2 records, it seems to me. But when we get to tunes like Mincemeat, I think that's their most personal song. The song that sort of, it's because it's biographical in large part. I didn't know that until, I didn't remember the accident until the documentary came out, and I remembered the notices in 7 Ball magazine. Or like, but I had totally forgot that had happened. And I was just thinking, yeah, God does make mincemeat of our lives sometimes, or our lives just get chewed up and gnarled sometimes. That happens. And then I saw the documentary. I was like, oh no, but for real, in their case, like this is a group of people who have a claim to say, I had this beautiful body and it's wrecked. What did you do? I used to have a 6-pack, whatever it was. Now look at all this scarring. It seems to me the kind of song that only Luxury could make, you know, in its aggression and its tenderness at the same time, and because of their sort of history. And it's also a song that they have a right to, it seems, in a unique way. But of course, the chorus of that song is so completely redemptive that it's got these legitimate grievances, right? Like, children die, wars happen, you know what I mean? Like, people starve, they drown coming over on boats trying to get to Europe. Like, this is the world we live in, what the hell, you know? And then the chorus doesn't rebut that stuff. You know, like a Shakespearean sonnet, there's 12 lines of complaining, and then he leaves himself just a couplet, kind of a show off because he's Shakespeare. There's just 2 lines to turn the entire thing around. And it does it, and the whole sonnet is there. You're like, yeah, okay, but I have you, and therefore everything's fine, or something like that, right? And I think that Luxury does something like that in this song. That, man, this happened, and you did this to me. To me, like, this happened, right? And then the chorus just comes, but you speak to me. That voice made the sea, and that's it, and that's enough. And it's a moment like right at the end of Job. All the complaining, all the horrible things, they happened. They happen all the time. But in the end, where were you when I drew Leviathan? That same kind of move. And it's a big and powerful, and I think a brave move for a rock band to trust people will keep up with something like that. And then the last song I want to talk about on this record is, oh man, Robed in Light, which a song just cuts you to the quick. I mean, this is one of those great pairs, like you're saying, the 1-2 punch of the last couple songs of Latest and the Greatest do the same sort of thing to those who gave me hope and were my light. Those two songs back to back, I just think are so extraordinary. Robed in Light, especially for its poetry and the way the musicianship supports the poetry. So, as you know, you guys know this song. I love talking to people who know. I don't have to explain that much. You know how these tunes go. But when it comes to the build, the song, to be so passionless, to be so far from the ugliness that I have always, and then you have to stop. The way poetic enjambment works, that's a term for like a line break, you know, like a slash, is I think they should have punctuated it in the lyric sheet they printed this way. But the line break needs to go after that I have always. Because with that, it launches you into conceptual space, right? Where your mind is supposed to finish the line. That's the thing. One day I'm going to be free from all this ugliness, like freeways and American architecture and God, like malls and social media, like all the stuff, that's going to burn away like dross, and there's just going to be beauty, right? That's going to exist someday. That's the wish. I think that'd be the normal thing to say. And what they do, these geniuses, decided, no, what I want to leave behind is not the ugliness I've always seen, which is the pedestrian observation, but the ugliness that I've always been, which, oh my gosh, every time, like I get weepy just thinking about it. It's Solzhenitsyn's move, right? The evil's not out there. The line between good and evil runs down the center of every human heart. So the thing I want to leave behind is this conflicted self. That seems so incredible to me. And then they sort of repeat the move, but it works for me the second time when they, hallelujah, and straight to hell. And I think, okay, yeah, growing up evangelical, I know what you mean. Let all this stuff burn. Let the sinners be in hell. Give me some distance between us and them. With the life, and I think, yeah, okay, no. My sins, that's what we want to send to hell. The worst parts about myself, the weakest parts, the crimes that I've committed against God's law or against my fellow man. But instead, and then it's a surprise again. What's going straight to hell? The life that I've lived, but not because of my errors, my sins, like we'd say, but just the fact that I didn't do it very well. And there's something humble about that, but also perfectly orthodox and correct, it seems to me. Like, you know, having the Greek notion of hamartia, that a missed mark, it's an archery term. Sin is an archery term. You missed. And so it's a way, like there's an apology, or not even an apology, something to be enraged by is wasted time, opportunities to do good that you didn't take. Do you know what I mean? It's not just crimes against some holiness. And both of those things, the way they surprise, the way they turn the unexpected, and saying something that makes perfect sense as soon as you hear it, seems to me like just the height of, that's what poetry can do. And the best part about those moments to me is that the band knows that, and whoever's recording it knows that too. And that the musicianship then supports those same moments, right? You know, like that feedback comes in and bang, right? At those moments. And that's important. That's not just cool. It is cool. It's like this moment where you, yeah, right? And you can mosh at the Allen's mosh pit. You know, like that's where you start jumping around. But that's not all it is. It's interpretive, right? Everybody knows like Radiohead's Creep, right? Like, it's a similar moment, yeah? The thing that he's saying is, I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo. That is not a cool thing to say. That is not a positive. Except those guitars and that bass and that drum kit behind it says, oh, but I mean creep in a good way. Like I'm badass for being a creep, you know, for being a weirdo. And it changes it, right? The music helps you interpret the lyrics. So the band seems to know that that's the height of their observation as well, and come in full force, sort of supporting the argument that the speaker's making in that moment. I suppose I'll leave my case there. I think the musicianship is more varied in this record than any other ones we've seen so far. There's a lot of acoustic guitar, for example, that there isn't on the earlier records, and it starts to get in the direction of prog rock, which I, for one, appreciate. It came off the hard edge sort of punk and started to evolve into what, I'm not going to call it a more mature style, but I know people do refer to it that way. But for those reasons, because I think it's the perfect luxury album. And I think they know that, which is why they named it after themselves. I'll leave my case there.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up, Thomas. We all was like, wait, TT played with Starflyer. Are you Tim Tabor from the Prayer Chain?
I thought it might have been Terry Taylor. That's gonna be very
I
exciting.
know. I was so excited. What anyway, but hey, cool. Good to have you here. Thank you for that, Misha. Sorry, I had to run, but I'm back. I like Misha said, I could have picked any one of these albums, and in fact, to be totally honest with you, I got Health and Sport because it was the only one left. But after spending some more time with it, I have to say how much I love this record. The only luxury, I would say, first of all, I would want to start by saying I think it's the darkest luxury record by far. No, don't go. Don't go. We need you here. I think it's the darkest luxury record by far, in ways that are still very earthy and rich and meaningful, but it feels, yes, exactly. In fact, I was going to mention that, Michael. There are, in some ways, I see that the Health and Sport as of a piece with Lee Bozeman's All Things Bright and Beautiful record. Those were both, I think, one was made a little earlier, but they're, early 2000s. This is the first luxury record that is truly I think luxury probably has like 4 comeback albums, probably, depending on how you define comeback. And I'd say this is the one that feels the most like there was the biggest disconnect between what came before and what came after, because from my understanding, this is after the band had mainly gone their separate ways. And a lot of it, I know in the documentary, DM Stith talks about the self-titled record being an interior type record. I think this one goes even deeper and dare I say darker on that front. It's sort of half, and the thing I love about it too is that it showcases, I mean, we've talked about this a bit already, but it showcases kind of these two sides or these two halves of luxury. One is just the snarling kind of chaotic, nearly out of control rock kind of milieu. And the other is the kind of stripped down, naked, emotional ballad. And I think that this record has those both, some of the best examples of both of those, and sometimes within the same song. And I think Strange Flowers, if I'm remembering the song correctly, is the one that starts out as a very, very intimate ballad and then builds into this menacing, am I thinking of the right one? It builds into this kind of menacing chugging. And speaking of suicide, Michael, right? That kind of background lyric from Jamie, "Will he forgive a suicide?" Just a dark record. And I think actually Lee might be here. I think I saw him come in like while we were talking. So I don't want to, I certainly, like, I've learned over my years of being a music critic that like I can't ascribe somebody's personal, life to their lyrics. Dare I say, I like to make fun of Christian bands, something more, for singing about this. To me, the first 2 tracks, Shake More Hands, Give More Hugs, and then the second track, which God Almighty is my favorite luxury song of all time. Shit, man, sorry, but that song rules so hard. I can't even think of the name of it because it's so long. I've been everywhere the grass is green. I've seen everything there is to see. A line from William Blake, if I'm not mistaken. And in fact, I believe that Aaron Sprinkle references the same poem on that, what's that song? The second Artcore compilation, I think actually he references that same poem. So there's a little crindy literary allusion history for you. I'll have to look it up again. But the thing I love about that song is that someone mentioned U2 earlier, and I think that it reaches heights that I still haven't found what I'm looking for, or could only dream of in my view. There is a tangible longing for something that feels both imminent and transcendent, that feels possible to grasp and yet just outside that grasp. And the way that that chorus builds every time, man, it just gets me. I'd love to believe there was something for me where we could just live like living could be. And my favorite bit too is that final, I think I said this in a piece I wrote a couple years ago, that final, I'd love to believe, where you've got what I understand is like Lee at the foreground and then kind of Jamie in the background, just like screaming his guts out on Believe. It's just beautiful. It's just brutal, beautiful. The drums are insane on that song. It's too bad the drums are a little bit low in the mix on that record. So no offense to whoever produced it, they're just a little bit low in the mix. But it's just beautiful to hear. So to me, that song is in some ways like, that's why I love that record so much, is just I think that song is incredible. Okay, shout out to Jamie. And then the other songs that kind of grabbed me. So again, I didn't really intend to go on like this sort of suicide motif, but there is this there's this kind of specter of death on that record. The Four Quartets, which I never bought this record when it came out. I do remember downloading a demo of the Four Quartets from like a luxury website at this time. And I believe the MP3 was actually labeled the Four Quartz Teats, which I thought was quite funny. I don't know if someone else did that as a joke, but I just remember hearing that lyric over and over again. I should have used a knife. And I was like, man, what is this? And I seem to recall a little snippet. I think there's a ballad on there that references Abraham and Isaac. I think it's the third track, that kind of short little piano ballad. So there's this kind of specter of sort of looming death, but also this like desire to grasp life. And that's one of the things I love too about the All Things Bright and Beautiful record, is I think there's this, and probably my favorite track on that is the last one, the Wedding Feast of the Lamb, I think. Just this grasping toward life, which I think happens in, it happens in the song Misha talked about in Robed in Light, and we could talk about it theologically or whatever, but I think it's relatable to anybody regardless of your theology. So those are the things I love about that record. And I find very, very moving the final song, He Watches Over Thee. Having been, I think many of us, I often think that people who are into music and are music critics probably were in bands or failed bands or something. And that song just really hits home to me. It's clearly, talking about the members of the band and the kind of the ways in which life circumstances have kind of, pulled them in different directions, but that there's still something there. And I think back to a previous song with that lyric, Brothers in Fraternity, which I also think of as being about the band in some way. So I love the record because it grapples with some very, very dark things, but also it is ultimately a record that looks longingly toward hope. And I think that's something that Luxury does really well. And we've heard several people talk about that already, so I won't continue to go on and on. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to say. Well, and frankly, yeah, as somebody I think just said in the chat, it felt like the end of the band too, and for all we knew it was, right? And I think to end on that I almost think of that last track as like a lullaby, which I think is probably because of the title. And I'd love to know if somebody knows what the, I think it's a recording of I believe it's Russian or some other language being spoken at the end. If anybody knows what that is, I'd be very curious, but I always pictured it as like I'm probably wrong about this. It's probably some very like pedestrian thing, but I was predicted as like interpreted as like a mother reading to her children before bed, something like this. This very like beautiful thing. So anyway, that is why I think Health and Sport is the darkest and scariest and best Luxury record. Thank you.
Great. So I've got the most recent one. And I think where I would start, and I guess where I am starting when defending trophies, is the gratuity of the thing. Because it was made after Lee and Jamie and Chris had become priests, so nobody in the world would have blamed them if they'd never made another Luxury album. I don't know about the rest of you. I certainly was not expecting another Luxury album. And then when they announced it, I don't know how many of us were expecting it to be any good, which is no offense to anybody in the band, but artistic inspiration is so often lightning in a bottle, and it happens, and it happens, and it happens, and who knows where it comes from. And certainly I wouldn't expect that sort of magic to happen again 10 years, 9 years after their last album. So I have this sense that we didn't need trophies, that their legacy was secure, such as it is. But we got the album and it was good. And there's something about that that's gratuitous in the sense that it's a pure gift to the world. And so I think that is really what strikes me the most about Trophies. But another thing I would say is that even aside from the quality of the songs themselves, Trophies sounds better than their other albums. The guitar tone is just so clear and so heavy, and everything is recorded perfectly, and it sounds great. I know I know Alan was talking about the sound of Amazing and Thank You being the sound of the band live, and I don't want to put down the band's live show because obviously it's amazing. But I'm a studio album guy, and I don't like how muddy Amazing and Thank You sounds. I love how clear everything is here on Trophies. And everything snaps. It sounds exactly where it should be in the mix, so that whatever you're listening for, whether you're listening for the vocals or the guitar, the drums or the bass, you're going to hear it very well. I don't know if we thank Jamie or Matt Goldman for that, but whoever did it did a great job. So anyway, they've returned after a decade, after these huge career changes for most of the band, and everything sounds so pressing and urgent. I love, I'm going to talk about just a few songs. Ginsberg Reading Howl. I love how that song fades in. To me, it's like they've been playing it for the last 10 years and they finally opened the studio door for us to hear it. And I think that song's a really great introduction to the album because in its way, it announces the techniques that the songs are going to follow, more or less. What do I mean by that? It's a cryptic lyric. It's just these series of noun phrases preceded by like, and then the chorus is this question: is it just me? And I mean, how do you answer that question? And then the noun phrases themselves range from references to drag queens and the wasteland, one of the many T.S. Eliot references on Trophies, to complaints about having to deal with the kind of niceties of polite society. And the first 20 times you think of listen to it, you just think, what the hell is this? And Lee's also doing a thing here that he's done his whole career, but I think he really perfects on this album, which is he takes this really intense emotion and he hides it behind all these layers of artifice, whether that's the lyrical references or where it's the kind of glam rock delivery that he's so good at. So I get this sense listening to that song and to the other songs on Trophies that he's feeling something, but that I have to work really hard to meet him on it, which, makes it really interesting to return to that song again and again, and eventually all those cryptic lyrics start to make more and more sense. And while I'm on that subject, I don't know how many of you have gone and read Lee's annotations for this album on his website, but they're great. They're very T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland, because sometimes they seem to be explaining something, but really it's just another layer of artifice to hide behind. It's great stuff. Meanwhile, the music is driving, but it's driving in a really strange way. It does that post-punk thing where the guitars are rhythmically off kilter. So like the lyrics, the music is inviting and disorienting at the same time. And Glenn is doing his usual things where the drums sound like they're falling down a flight of stairs, but still staying in time. And Chris sounds like he's playing on a Fugazi album. It's really great stuff. Everything just kind of clicks together in that song and lets you know what you're in for with this album. And one more thing about that song, which is that I love to hear Jamie's vocals on this and on The War on Women. He's doing the thing Joel mentioned from I Have Been Everywhere the Grass is Green, where he sings the really high part. And I loved that about Health and Sport, was that Jamie got to sing lead on a few songs, at least a few verses of songs. I don't know how many of you know the first They Sang As They Slew album, Get Well, but I would put that up there with the best of the luxury work. So like I said, I'm not going to go through this album song by song, but I think the things I've identified in Ginsberg Reading Howl are what makes the album my favorite. It hits so hard, and it's got these strange little elements that I didn't necessarily suspect. You've got the kind of jangle pop arpeggios underneath the otherwise very heavy Don't Feel Bad If You Don't Feel Better Right Away. Or like there's this kind of shoegazy mist behind War on Women and Courage, Courage. And then unexpectedly, the album turns really tender and beautiful, like on the title track or Words of Mouth or Gates of Paradise. And by the way, I think Gates of Paradise is probably my favorite luxury song. I go back and forth on that. There's a couple other ones, but I love Gates of Paradise. And then lyrically, I think Lee is taking some topics and ideas he's covered before and kind of perfecting his treatment of them. So I think Ginsberg Reading Howl has a lot in common with Euphrates with the Golden Hands, but I think it's a more sophisticated twist on that sort of disgust with modern society. And I love Euphrates, don't get me wrong, but I think Ginsberg blows it out of the water. And then War on Women deals with a lot of the same sexual baggage from that All Things Bright and Beautiful album that Joel was talking about. But there's more distance and more perspective on those things. And I don't know if I would say it's better than those songs, but I think it adds a new layer to them. And then there are songs that I don't think Lee could have written until this album. You Must Change Your Life is this great reflection on how you understand yourself differently as you get older. And I think I'm about the age now that Lee was when this album was recorded. And man, I get it. Like, I wouldn't have gotten it 10 years ago, but I get it now. And Courage, Courage, which took me a while to get into. I think that is the lyrical centerpiece of the whole album. I think most of the ideas in the other songs lyrically get tied together in Courage, Courage, and then Gates of Paradise ends up being a kind of benediction for Trophies. And maybe I'm overthinking that, but I mean, what are we doing here if not overthinking these albums? So I guess what I would say in the end is that Trophies is one of those albums where you feel like it would be a perfect final record because it perfects the form the band has been moving toward their whole career. But then at the same time, I would hate for it to be the final record because it's so good that I want more. And it seems like we might get more, so that's good. That's all I got.
Great. Thanks everyone for presenting your cases. And I learned a lot more about these albums just listening to your guys' cases for them and just the references that I don't catch because I don't maybe have that the expertise or whatnot. I'm just curious, like, as some of you guys have kind of mentioned maybe your first Luxury album, like what got you each into the band? Do you guys have kind of memories about first, where do you first hear about Luxury? Do you remember that?
Surely a lot of us, it's that Tooth and Nail rock sampler with Metropolitan on it.
I just bought every Tooth and Nail record, regardless of like if I knew what the band was or what they sounded like. I think
it was a better time, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the first song I heard was When the Curtain Falls on Artcore Volume 1, actually.
Wow.
What about you, Alan?
I think it was the sampler. Now that you mention it, I think it was the sampler that made me buy it.
Yeah, I listened to a radio show in Nashville called The A Zone. Tony Shore, Casey Jones were the DJs. Tony Shore, many of you are probably familiar with. They started playing some songs off Amazing and Thank You before it was released. And so bought it in Baptist Bookstore after it came out. And actually I was listening, the A Zone was only on Saturday nights. I was listening actually when they found out about the van wreck, so I was like listening live on there, and they talked about the van wreck, it was pretty nuts. So that's when I hinted and linked to my article, I saw Luxury for the first time in what I'm almost certain, and maybe the band members can confirm tonight, was their first show back after the car wreck at the Pterodactyl in Georgia, where they only played Solid Gold. That was the only song they played.
Did they play it for 40 minutes, or did they just play for 10 minutes and leave?
Yeah, that's my question.
So the show I went to, it was Starflyer 59 Morelos Forest tour. I'd seen it in Birmingham the night before, and then I drove to Atlanta to see it the next night. Joe Christmas actually played first. So it was Joe Christmas, then Morelos Forest. And a band got up on the stage, and the lead singer said, "Hi, we're Starflyer 59." But then that band played Solid Gold, and it was Luxury. And they only played one song, and then Starflyer 59 played. So anyway.
When the self-titled album came out, I was writing for the Phantom Toll Booth, if you guys remember that online magazine. And since I was in Georgia, they sent me to interview the band. So I go down and meet them at a local festival called Fall Quest. It's in Villa Rica, Georgia. And now understand, I have heard at this point Metropolitan. That's it. So I'm just going down to meet them and to set up a time to do this interview because I was going to be at the festival anyway. So I'm talking to, I think it was just Lee and Jamie before they go on stage. And I don't know how many of you have met Lee. He's very unassuming when he's not on the stage. So, you know, he's very quiet. We have this nice conversation. And then they get up there and he turns into Lee Bozeman of luxury. And I remember very clearly, they did Euphrates with the Golden Hands, and Lee reaches into his back pocket and pulls out an American flag, which he rubs all over his crotch and then throws it out into the crowd. So that was my first experience. Nate Becker is in the chat. You know, Judah McNeil at Toccoa Falls picked that up and asked him to sign it. And I remember he signed it, "Don't take it too seriously."
That's great. And yeah, thanks for everyone who's been attending. Is there anybody in the audience who has any questions or any other comments about these bands, the luxury or the albums?
I have a final confession. Amazing and Thank You is not my favorite luxury album. The best luxury album is Trophies. The best luxury album is Trophies. And I'm just so, anyway. And actually, the best luxury album is the one that's going to come out next year. So, I mean, that's right.
You're naming and claiming it.
Yep. Well, I'll tell you what, let's do, now Alan has poisoned the well a little bit, but let's do a poll. I'm going to do a poll so we can all vote.
Oh, how do I do it?
I mean, I have to confess, I had forgotten all about luxury until I saw the Twitter thing, and Trophies is really good, and I haven't explored the self-titled and Health and Sport as much as I want to, but so I'm going to stick with my own. But
so I can't vote because I created this, so I'm not going to reveal my true beliefs, but everybody else can vote. And I think, you know, if you're in the band, please go ahead and vote. If you want to, if you feel you can't, that's fine.
So I came in, I'm a really latecomer to this scene. Like luxury was peripheral to the scene that I was part of. I was on the West Coast. They didn't play out there that as often, you know. So for me, it was Plank Eye, Bloomsday, Starflyer, Sometime Sunday, you know, that. So I had a luxury sticker on my electric guitar case, I'm sure, but I don't think I'd ever heard their songs. I just knew they were cool. And for whatever reason, I knew of all the Tooth and Nail bands, but I hadn't heard the music. I probably was one of the people in the video, they say like, it was a little effeminate or something like that in the 90s, which was all, you know, Bush and testosterone and everything. Yeah, Trophies, that's probably right.
Trophies is the best. There's just no way around it.
It's a beautiful record. What are you going to do? But I just said
that's recency bias. That's recency bias talking.
It's not that.
That's what I'm saying. That's that's why I'm like an impartial observer. I have no childhood memories of beautiful concerts that I went to, or you spoke to me during the coming of age period of my life. I just came in as a full-fledged adult with like, you know, degrees in a family of my own, and I started listening to these records one by one. I started with Trophies. That was the first record I heard, front to back, and I was like,
it does feel like there's also nostalgia bias, or like in the case of my argument, there's just albums that fit in their time. But I was just super pleased to go back and discover that it like is totally still listenable. Like that's the coolest thing.
If Chris or Lee wants to comment on anything that we totally butchered, or something that you disagree with, you know, speak now or forever hold your peace. But you don't have to. We won't force you to. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Oh, there's Chris.
Hey.
Thanks for being here.
I'm hiding in the background. I think Lee is on here too. But
Lee says way overthought. Yes. Well, we wouldn't have it any other way.
Way overthought. That's funny.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I guess all I wanted to say, I mean, I certainly can't speak for the lyrical content, but it's just been a joy sitting here listening to you all just talk about all of these albums. I mean, this has been our life, and you know, we've poured a lot of our creative energy into this for many years. And you know, just to hear, like I told Joel recently on I think on Messenger or email, I've appreciated Joel's writing, because I feel like he's one of the few journalists that kind of have gotten us, you know, I mean, just publicly. And So just hearing all of you talk about it, it just does a lot to, I know, just encourage me, I think, just to feel like we're not just writing these songs and just throwing them out to the universe, but you know, just to hear you all engage in it on a deeper level, it just means a lot. It totally means a lot. And, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it is wild. So I think I told you, Chris, that my new book, I would plug it if I could. It's not out yet, but it talks a lot about how there's the notion of a music scene or whatever. There's a real camaraderie, and I know it's a bit weird, you know, because it's like, well, I made this thing and now people are dissecting it, and I understand that's strange, but there's a sense in which the rock critic Richard Meltzer calls it a parallel artistic effort to describe art and to make art, or to discuss and I think it all comes down to, like, we're all invested in this stuff. Like, we care about these things, not just the music, but the themes, you know, the lyrics, and, like, you know, and there's a way in which, like, this is a way that we create community, and it's a way that kindred spirits find each other, and I'm really grateful for that. And the thing of it, the nub of it is this wonderful music you guys have made. So thank you for making it.
Awesome.
Anybody else?
Lee has revealed himself here, so.
Oh, hey, Lee.
Everybody. Sorry, I'm in the dark. I don't have great lighting in here, but no, this is really interesting. You spent a lot of time talking about lyrics, and that's, for me, obviously, that is wonderful to kind of think through and hear. I say it's way overthought. I don't really mean that. When you're writing songs, you don't know what you're doing, like what you're saying, why you're saying it. Misha's a great poet, and he probably experiences, well, you don't set out to say something necessarily. And so to see it kind of come out, and then 20, 30 years later, have you kind of, you know, say, oh, this is what it meant. Like, yeah, that's great. I'm glad that we figured it out finally. So, but it's also really encouraging. I'm looking at, you know, the new songs that we've been working on, which incidentally have not been going well at all. Yeah, you know, the Trophies may be the last record, but I don't know, we'll see. But it just, you know, to look at the new lyrics and the content of it, and what I'm talking about, and still not knowing how is this working and how is this all coming together. So this is inspiring, actually, to hear. I mean, it's luxury. We're such a small little blip on anything. So I feel like you're collaborators with us more than anything, and just sort of, you're probably dangerous, actually, more than anything. But yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Well, you know what they say, like, not many people heard the Velvet Underground, but everybody who had that record started a band. I think not that many people heard Luxury, but everybody heard it, became a theologian, or got an advanced degree, or became a professor.
Yeah, there's that too. So, but you're all wrong, by the way. Health and Sport is by far the best record. So,
boom.
Yeah.
That's what you said in this book. I read it earlier. I hadn't looked at this book in a while, but
yeah, that's it. Okay.
Yeah, and Lee, I don't know if you tuned in for the Amazing and Thank You, but I didn't talk at all about the lyrics. It was all about the rock and roll. So
yeah, you did say you didn't know when he was singing about sex.
I didn't. I didn't. I was sheltered and I was young and I didn't know.
Well, I didn't know either. So cool of us, you know. So. No, really, I didn't. That's the funny thing. So
that's what rock and roll lets you do. It lets you try those things on, and I think that's what's cool about it. So, okay, anybody else? I want to welcome other comments from people. Misha, sorry to interrupt you, but do throw stuff in the chat if you want to ask anybody, and we can wrap up in a few minutes. But I'm able to be here for another 20 minutes or so. Misha, were you saying something?
Oh, I was just gonna say that half of art making is instinct, anyways. I don't think that's unusual. Even when you've been doing it for a rather long time, you get to the page every time and think, wait, how does this go again? Like, you have to teach yourself to. So I think there was some mention in the documentary about that. Like, after they had not played together for a long time, they had to figure out how to be a band again. And like, though my college bands didn't ever get beyond college, like, I, as a writer, recognize that feeling intensely. Like, even when I get to lecture, when I do a class, after taking the summer off, I walk in the first day and I think, see all those people staring at me. Is this what I do? How do I do this? Like, you have to learn it again. So I don't think it's unusual that Lee was saying, you know, I didn't know what I was doing. I don't think that's some particular innocence. It's most artists agree to launch themselves into that unknown and kind of channel something bigger than themselves. This is fun to meet all you guys.
I will, Misha, I will say that that's true for everyone except for jazz artists. Like they just play the same thing over and over. They don't have to reinvent that ever.
Yeah, that's right. They can do it every time. Yeah. I was actually going to reference jazz because that in this song I was talking about, that's the way it feels to me, that the music is doing one thing and the lyrics are doing a different thing. And like a jazz combo where you say, all right, meet me at middle C 5 bars from now. Who knows what's going to happen in between? But that's the way a lot of the songs on the record I was talking about seem to go. And it's like, and they hit at the exact moment that the theology also explodes open for me. And that's the incredible trick of like half the songs on that record. It's Conquer and Destroy. I just can't believe the things that happen. How the guitar is always sort of playing catch up, right? It's got this driving kind of chariot quality to it. I get excited. Another style.
So I'm curious, is there going to be touring in Luxury's future?
Well, there's a show.
Yeah.
There's at least 2 shows, right?
Nice.
Is there touring in any band's future?
Yeah.
No. I mean, we're playing. Well, as Alan said, we're playing in Atlanta on
23rd.
23rd. And then we're playing the festival in Birmingham on the 24th, and that'll be it. I'm pretty sure. So I hope anyway.
It's amazing that we're even doing that, actually.
What's the last time you all played a luxury show? Like,
that's a good question.
Man.
2002, 20 years. I mean, it's been probably
wow.
20 years, yeah.
Wow.
I think we played Cornerstone 2002, and I think that was our last show.
I was curious if that was it because I was there, and I was wondering if there was one after that. So.
Yeah, because I went to seminary that fall, and I don't think we played after that. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll take about 10 songs to figure out what we're doing again. So when we're done. So.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that you're not a hardcore band because you can't really cover up your mistakes. You know, a lot of those bands, there's so much noise, you know, it doesn't matter if they practice or not. So.
Well, it's funny. I mean, we've gotten together a few times over the last few years, you know, just working on new stuff. And when we thought Furnace Fest was going to be last year, you know, we got together last March before the pandemic and we went through songs, and, you know, the songs from the first 2 albums, you know, I think we played well because they were just kind of ingrained in us. But anything past, I don't know, the self-titled, we were just like, we had to have like little pieces of paper out and like, you know, reading the the notes and what chord is that again? I mean, like Health and Sport, I don't think we ever even played any of those songs really.
I was going to say, is Health and Sport the most sort of, I feel like the more sort of studio-y album in the sense of being compiled from different things.
Yeah, Jamie put that whole thing together. I mean, it was like scraps of this and that. Glenn's playing some drums, Chris is playing some drums. I mean, I recorded most of the vocals in my, you know, spare bedroom. I mean, it was really assembled in a haphazard kind of way. So, which is why it's so great. It's the least luxury record that we have, I think. So.
It's your White Album.
Yeah.
There you go. Cool. Well, listen, if anybody needs to go, that's fine. Otherwise, we can just hang out here and shoot the breeze. Yeah, Alex, I don't know. Do you have anything to, as our moderator, do you have any final thoughts to wrap things up in a neat little package?
Nothing beyond just, it's great to have everyone here. And yeah, thanks, Joel, for kind of arranging this. And thank you to Chris and David for Lee for joining. Yeah, I think that like what you mentioned, Joel, about music brings people together with this kind of shared sense of camaraderie. And I think I'm a decade or two younger than you guys, but I also just kind of sense this, like we have this same passion or the same artists that we appreciate. And I just think it's great to get together and chat and appreciate luxury.